am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have a special guest. She's a voice teacher. And of course, an author too, no other than Ms.Christen home. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Kristen, and can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was so excited to find your podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds awesome. I would love to be on it. But yeah, my name's Kristen. I'm a voice teacher, which means I teach people how to sing. I specialize in helping people that tell themselves they can't sing. So I help them learn how to sing.
Yes.
I have also been a performer my whole life. I did a lot of opera, went through music school, all that jazz. But now I am an aspiring author myself. And I've always been a huge bookworm. I love fantasy. And I grew up reading Star Wars and a bunch of various fantasy novels. So,
Miss Kristen, who are your favorite authors that influence you the most?
one that immediately pops into mind is her name is Juliet Marillier. She is a New Zealand author. She writes historical fantasy, and her novels are typically set in ancient Ireland. And her very first novel was like a retelling of the Grimm's fairy tales, the Grimm's fairy tale of the Six Swans, it's just an incredible novel. It was the first book that I read that I could easily say, oh, this is my favorite book, which was very difficult for me to decide. Another author that has definitely influenced me, it's one of my favorite authors, is a sci-fi author, actually, Timothy Zahn. He writes a lot of Star Wars novels, particularly about the character Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I love Zahn's writing. I love the kind of like I'm having trouble articulating. I love it. But I mean, his character Thrawn is just incredible. It's one of my favorite characters in all of fiction.
So Thrawn, I think Thrawn is one of the anime, if I'm not mistaken.
Thrawn is in Dave Filoni's Rebels, so his animated show called Rebels. Yes, Thrawn is in that, and then he's also featured, I believe, this might be spoilers, but well, no, he was in the trailer. So he's also going to be featured in the new Ahsoka show as well.
Wow, interesting indeed. If you describe their styles of writing of your favorite authors, what are they?
So I like Juliet Marillier because she gets really deep into this is a lame way of saying it, I think, but she gets really deep into the characters. So she stays very focused. They're written in I think they're written in third person. They're written in third person, but they might as well be written in first person. And she gets really deep into like the psychologies of the characters and lets them really sit in kind of terrible situations and help and not help them, but watch them. You get to watch them like work through very challenging things and deal with not just the challenging thing that they're trying to overcome, but all of the emotional baggage that comes with it. And I think that is so true to life. And her characters have set such great examples for me. I read those in high school, and I felt like it helped me overcome challenges in my life. And maybe not beat myself up so much for getting emotional about them because, we're just emotional creatures. And then Zahn, I like Zahn because he writes, I feel like, Thrawn himself is a very analytical character. And I feel very smart reading those books. And it's fun to read a book that makes you feel smart.
Definitely.
So it's also so intriguing to watch a character because originally Thrawn is a Grand Admiral in the Imperial Army. And, for those who don't know the Star Wars universe, they're the bad guys. And so they're very stereotypical bad guys. They're mean. They don't, respect human life. They don't respect life at all. They're they don't lead very well, but Thrawn is a very neutral character in a very evil organization, and he does lead very well. And so it's just so interesting watching a phenomenal leader in lead in very unconventional ways in a military where we've, typically it's definitely not your typical style of military leadership. And I just love reading about that and watching or reading how successful it can be if you run your ship, so to speak, in that way.
Very well said, Ms.Christen. So, are you almost published your first debut novel?
No, because I'm writing it with a co-author, one of my best friends. And originally it was going to be one novel, and then we kept writing. And by the time we got to the end of the story, we realized it was actually 3 novels. So we are working on rewrites now for book 2. And we still have to get through book 3, and then we got to go back and finish and polish book 1 before it's ready to publish. But what we are doing in the meantime is we're releasing our chapters so that people can read our story and share, and actually, if they want, like, give us input. Like I know for me as a reader, I love the idea of getting to chat with the author and be like, oh, what about this idea? Or I wonder what's going to happen next. And just kind of build the world together. And so that's kind of what we're inviting people to do, is come read our stuff. Let us know what you think. And if you want to see some changes, let us know. We'll definitely, we're not published yet, so we'll take them into consideration. And if it's more interesting than our ideas, we're happy to use it. So it's just a fun experiment that we're running right now. So
can we talk about it? What will be the title of your debut novel?
Well, we don't have individual novel names yet, but the trilogy will be called The Bell and the Bow. And you can find the chapters on Wattpad if you just search The Bell and the Bow.
What behind the title of The Bell and the Bow?
Yeah, so The Bell and the Bow is indicative of we have 2 protagonists, so 2 main characters, and one of them, their symbol, so to speak, is the bell, and then one of them's symbol is a bow. She's an archer.
Oh, what kind of genre?
It is definitely fantasy. This is not like totally unusual, but it was inspired by one of the Dungeons and Dragons campaigns that I was playing. And so it is set in pretty traditional fantasy setting. Think Lord of the Rings, so medieval sort of setting. And so she is an archer. And she, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, she's modeled after your typical kind of ranger sort of class. And she fights monsters, and she likes to defend the people and make trouble and get into trouble and then get out of it. And then the other protagonist, his symbol is more of the bell. He's the peacekeeper. He's the diplomat. He does a lot more talking than fighting. And it's just really interesting kind of bringing the 2 characters together and seeing how their dynamic works.
So what will be your timeline for publishing this trilogy? Is it trilogy?
It is a trilogy. Yeah. We're hoping to be able to publish the first book. It really depends, because my co-author and I are both holding down full-time jobs while we're doing this. And so we're hoping it's almost the end of 2023. So we're hoping 2025, just realistically, to be able to publish our first book number 1 in 2025.
Your concept will be you're gonna finish the book first, then you're gonna publish them all.
No, we'll probably get book 1 done and ready to publish. And then we'll have book 2 basically almost ready to publish. We'll say like 90% there. And then before we publish book 1, and then book 3 will probably be in edits. So if we do that, though, it means that the books can come out relatively quickly. So we can release book 1 in 2025, then 2026, we can release book 2, and 2027, we can release book 3.
Good luck for that, Ms.Christen. And
yeah, thanks.
I hope you will come back and promote all the books that you had, the
Would
trilogy.
love to.
And before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in, of course, in Japan. Arigato gozaimasu. Hi, Japan, for supporting this podcast. In Tokyo, I got 75% audience share. Miyazaki, 5%. Yufu, 3%. Nara, 3%. Aichi, 3%. Hyugo. Kumamoto, Kanagawa, last but not the least, Hokkaido, 3%. Thank you, Japan, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Ms.Christen home. So, Ms.Christen, what favorite book that you want to share to us?
Yeah, so the one of the books that I'm actually still reading the series, but one of these, it's just been an amazing book. This book one is called His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik. And it just is a standout novel, I think. I love that she blends, it's a historical fantasy. So it's basically if dragons were present in the world during the Napoleon Wars. So I think, yeah, the Napoleon Wars in Europe, and there's dragons. And it's just like, it's so much fun. It's super cool. She does, a ton of research into like the Napoleonic Wars and the different victories and losses and stuff. But this first one really features, it stays in England because it's introducing the characters. The first thing that you see is basically a naval officer, a captain of a ship. They capture a French ship, and that French ship has a dragon egg on it. And the dragon egg is going to hatch before they get back to England. And so somebody, according to like just everything that they know, as people in the Navy and not necessarily people who handle dragons all the time, but all they know is that somebody has to, quote unquote, harness the dragon immediately upon hatching, or the dragon will go useless. Like they won't be able to use the dragon. And dragons are like a very rare resource for England. They don't have very many, and they need every dragon that they can get. And so, so dragons are very rare resource for them. So like, we need every dragon that we can get. But at the same time, becoming a dragon handler basically kills any chance of like a social life effectively, or like promotion or anything. Like dragon people that handle the dragons are looked down on. They're ostracized from society. And so this guy has, like, his father is a lord, and it's kind of set in, if you think like Jane Austen kind of times. And so it's like a blend of those genres. So that has a lot of social implications, and he deals with a lot of social pressures and stuff. And it's really, really interesting to watch Naomi like throw a quote unquote gentleman of the time into what is a relatively uncivilized circle of society, uncivilized from their perspective, and just watching that kind of unfold, all while he is trying to raise a dragon.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so these dragons are a little different from Game of Thrones. These ones can talk, right? And there's varying levels of intelligence. But these ones can talk, and they're named, and they're very attached to their captains. That's what their handlers are called. They're captains in the military. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. And
something else, right? I think this is the first novel of Miss Naomi Novik.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a New York Times bestseller. Oh my goodness. And according to Stephen King, a terrifically entertaining fantasy novel.
I can second that for sure. I agree. It's very entertaining.
So what are the elements of Miss Novik that make the readers glued to it?
Well, so for me, I don't know if I could speak for all readers, but I know for me, I actually really I enjoyed Pride and Prejudice. I enjoy reading Jane Austen, and I love fantasy. So I liked seeing the blend of the genres. And I loved seeing what like I said earlier, a gentleman who very much is convicted of his duty and his honor and behaves very, very honorably kind of throughout. Even when other people are not behaving honorably, he doesn't like rail against them. He doesn't like yell at them or anything when they're not behaving that way, because you didn't do that at the time. You just kind of like watched it and be like, well, they suck. And you just continue operating with your principles. But so it's so interesting, I think, watching the social dynamic of it. I just so enjoyed that. There's actually, I can't remember. Do you do spoilers on these or no? No spoilers?
No spoilers, please.
No spoilers. Okay. Well, there is a moment. There is a moment later in the book where his convictions really come to a head, and that's like the climax of the different like behavior or principle behaviors, excuse me. And one of the dragon handlers or dragon captains does something that is just like, it's so truly despicable. And Lawrence, the main character, he's so fed up with it that he finally, like, even though it might get him in trouble, he does something about it. And like, I was sobbing by the end, and it was just like, it's such an incredibly powerful moment. And that is as much as I can say with no spoilers, but seriously, it's so cool. And the other thing is like watching, Temeraire, the main dragon, completely different dragon. Like, they don't even know what breed he is. So that they don't even tell you what breed he is. Like, they tell you what breed they think he is at the beginning. And then like, that's because it's their best guess. They don't know because they've never seen one before. So that's also so interesting, since that unknown element is there, not just for Lawrence, but also for all of the rest of the dragon people. It's fun to like have that element of discovery, and wonder. And yeah, it's such a great ride kind of the whole time.
Do you think in the future, Ms.Christen, that the attribute of style of writing of Miss Naomi Novik, you can adopt it?
You know what? I don't know if I will ever like successfully adapt it, but I do know that she has influenced. I love reading her because actually one of the protagonists in my in my novel, I work really hard to write in a more kind of like sophisticated, more like Jane Austen, in an older timey way. Very formal, very proper, very lots of propriety, very honor driven. And so I definitely pull some inspiration from Naomi Novik. So I don't know if I'm doing it successfully, but yes, it is. She has definitely influenced, and given me such a great example of how to write in a style that harkens to the older style, but still captivates modern readers. I think that's something that some modern readers have trouble going back and reading Jane Austen, because it's written so differently from how novels are written today. If you're not one of those readers, don't worry. Like you'll still enjoy Naomi Novik. But if you are one of those readers that's like, oh, that sounds really interesting, but Jane Austen is so hard to read, I would still give Naomi Novik a try, because she writes in the style of Jane Austen, but it's not quite so dense, in my opinion. Like, it's like, yeah, it's definitely an easier read. Get the feel.
Okay, and according to Raymond Thompson, high adventure and heroism and raises serious issues. So, Ms.Christen, what are the serious issues in the book that you want to share to us?
Well, they bring up in this book, hold on, I'm trying to, again, no spoilers, I'm trying to figure out. In this book, they do bring up the class dynamics, which, even though they are specific to that time in England, we still deal with class dynamics in the real world today. So it's interesting to see examples of how people deal with various class dynamics. And depending on where you are in the world, they are, more or less subtle, or more or less like official, if that makes sense. And then the other serious issues that it brings up is the dragons are basically people, but they are not treated like people. Like they are conscious. They to me, you know, I would read them to be like, well, yeah, they have souls, obviously, right? So they're sentient. They're living beings that deserve autonomy, and they are 100% almost treated like horses, like really fancy horses. Which yeah, that does raise a lot of issues, and she continues to explore that through all the novels. It's a slow burn, because you've got the primary plot of each book, but she continues to build on, for lack of better word, you know, we use the word dehumanization, but like they're not human, they're dragons, but you know, they're basically people, but they're not being treated as people. They're being treated almost as cattle. So she confronts that just kind of slowly and over time. And then in further novels, she also tackles racism and slavery, because at the time slavery was still legal in England, and that becomes like very real and kind of hands-on in which novel is it? I think it's 3. I think it's book 3. I think I'm reading book 4 right now. But yeah, so very serious issues, but she handles them so well and so even-handed. I think, but also not, because she's writing, she handles them very sensibly, but she stays very within Lawrence's perspective. And I don't think she gets preachy about it, which is nice. She just kind of lets the character deal with it how they would deal with it. Yeah, for me, it doesn't feel preachy. It just feels real.
Interesting, Ms.Christen. If you want to go back and, let's say, modify the book itself, which part of the book you want to modify?
Oh my gosh, that feels like such an audacious question. Be like, if you would change something, yeah. I don't know if I would change anything. I almost don't read that way. This is, I don't know if I can answer this question. Let me think for a little bit. I know, like, you don't really want to there. I don't know. So sometimes she does some time skips, and sometimes you're like, oh, I wanted to see more. So I think if I had to pick something, I would say, like, I would make these books longer so that I could see more. But sometimes, you know, making them longer makes them less good, right? Sometimes the cutting things out is better. It's like short and sweet. I think we have that expression for a reason. So as much as I love reading, you know, like I've loved watching the extended Lord of the Rings, and I love reading the unabridged versions and stuff. Like I do still have to admit that sometimes, you know, if it's not 100% necessary, it's okay to cut it. But I think if I had to pick something, I would just add more. I just want to see more. I want to keep reading.
So you're suggesting that there will be a prequel?
Oh my gosh, that would be interesting.
I'm asking you, if you have the chance to write the prequel of His Majesty's Dragon, or what will be?
Oh, I would probably, if I could write a prequel, well, they kind of sum that up. If I could write a prequel, I would probably place it. One of the novels takes place in China, because that's where the dragon is from. And so they travel back to his homeland. So I think if I could write the prequel, that's what I would feature, is how that egg, or how China came to the decision to send the egg away. And just kind of all of it, because they do summarize it. And you get the information that you need for the context of the book. But I think that would be really, really interesting to kind of see play out beat by beat, and really get some insights into how into the Chinese characters and the Chinese dragons and just how all of those politics are handled, I think that would be fascinating.
That'd be awesome. Very well said, Ms.Christen. And but before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, on our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the best restaurants in downtown Toronto. And please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about lasagna, people. Lasagna, one of the trademark of Italian cuisine. Plus one books are out, not only one but seven, people. It's volume one basics until seven, available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. And it's all about our 100 episodes of our first season, people. And you will learn how to create a delicious food. So grab a copy and tell to the world. Right, Ms.Christen?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love lasagna. So good.
Oh, yes. So, Ms.Christen, His Majesty's dragon. What do you think the flaws?
Oh, the flaws. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm terrible at answering questions like this. The flaws. I don't think I can answer that question. I read so my in high school when my English teacher was teaching like literature and like plot and all that jazz, she was talking about how a bad plot is when you can see the strings.
Yes.
And I and when audiences consistently stop suspending their disbelief, which the strings, you know, if you start seeing the strings, then your disbelief is no longer suspended. And I am one of those readers where it's hard for me to see the strings. My friends see strings way sooner than I do. So I feel like if you ask this question to my husband or to my co-author, they would be able to tell you like, boom, boom, boom. These are all the problems. This is what could be done better. Like, here's where this felt a little contrived, but I didn't read it that way with like kind of a critical mindset. I just kind of like go in and I'm like wide-eyed and staring, and I'm not asking questions. And I think that's because it's a pretty well written book. I'm sure there are things that there are flaws and things that could have been done better or things that people would nitpick. I just don't know what they are. Like I didn't have any, me personally.
Because they're beautifully written.
I thought so. Everything felt logical. Actually, here I will say this: to try to earn some credibility back. I have not been satisfied lately with the writing in Star Wars or Disney in terms of like their shows, right? Their Marvel or TV shows or whatever. I look at that writing and I'm like, that's just not good. The dialogue doesn't make sense. The plot doesn't make sense. I'm starting to see the strings more and more. And I didn't with this book.
So do you think this novel is good for a series or a motion picture?
Ooh, I would love to see it done as a show. I think movies are never as good as their books. With the exceptions. Well, no, okay, still like Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings were magnificently done. But I still don't know. And they definitely made that story, that incredible story, more easily consumed because it is so difficult to read Tolkien. Tolkien is so hard to read. But I still don't know if you can say that those movies are better than their books. But I do believe that TV shows are a better format for novels because you can take more time to set the stage, to get into the characters' heads, to show and let things develop. You don't have to cut as much, and novels already have to cut a lot from their word counts especially if you're publishing traditionally, and then movies just have to cut even more. And so I think it would be a great ongoing TV show. If they could do it well, you'd still have to get the right creative team, right? The right director, right producer, right screenwriter, to get that all ported and done properly. But I do think this would be a great TV show, because then you can also, you can do one season per novel. I think that would be great.
Yes, definitely. And according to Jared McPhee, best dragon book ever.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you agree with that, Ms.Christen?
The best dragon book ever. I don't know. I read the Dragonlance Chronicles. Those are pretty good dragon books, but the dragons are all evil, basically. Like, there are some good dragons. So, but if you compare it to Aragon, definitely better than Aragon. And I loved Aragon when I was younger. Like, just I was obsessed. And nothing against Christopher Polini, but yeah, I think it's definitely better than Aragon.
Oh, definitely level up, right?
Yes, 100%.
And thank you, listeners, for my latest scores of 25. Thank you so much. And of course, my 10% popular show globally. Thank you, listeners. So, Ms.Christen, what is your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Well, the short-term goal is to get that first novel published. My long-term goals, we have actually about 15 books total already kind of in the works, all set in the same world. We called it Urda. So we've got our world of Urda, and that's why all of our social media is called World of Urda, because we plan to write in Urda for a very, very long time. It's kind of like an analog would be Tolkien, when Tolkien is writing in Middle Earth, right? He just keeps writing stories that all take place in Middle Earth. And that's kind of what we're doing with our books. So our short-term goal is to get this first trilogy published, starting with the first novel. But then we've got at least 2 more trilogies for the same audience in the works. Those will be next after our first trilogy. And then we've got some kids books, and then some young adults books as well, kind of slated to just like I already have not a spreadsheet, but a document with ideas that I'm writing down, just whenever they pop into my head. So those are our long-term goals. I plan on writing in Urda for a very, very long time, and I would love to share that with just as many people as possible and inspire readers like I was inspired as a reader. Like, I know I was, a lonely kid who didn't make friends very easily, and so books were my best friends growing up. And so if I can turn around and provide that sort of connection for other readers who maybe just feel like they need a good story and a good friend to connect with, then I would love to be able to do that for people.
So, Ms.Christen, His Majesty's Dragon, can you please invite them to read it, buy it?
Yeah. I mean, I would 100% recommend this book, His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik. Please go find it. Hopefully at a local bookstore if you can. But if you can't, it's definitely available on Amazon. There is a great set that was published where if you buy all 9, the spines, you can see Temeraire on all of the spines when they're like right next to each other, and it's so cool. It's a great cover design. But yeah, you can find them on Amazon. But go to your local bookstore, maybe even a Barnes and Noble before you try Amazon. But yeah.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Naomi Novik. It's already best-selling author, so
yeah,
so congratulations, Miss Naomi Novik. And they're saying that he is an avid reader of fantasy literature since age of 6. Oh,
makes
wow.
sense. Yep.
And Naomi Novik is also a history buff with a particular fascination with the Napoleonic era and a fondness for the work of Patrick O'Brien and Jane Austen. Oh, that's why you can see in her writing, right? Okay. Are you fun with those writers too, Miss Kristen?
I don't know Patrick O'Brien, but I do know, I have mentioned earlier, I have read Jane
Jane
Austen.
Austen,
Yeah.
Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah.
I hope one day Miss Naomi Novik will be my guest, and I will invite you, and let's talk about all the books creating or her creating, right, Miss Kristen?
Yeah, that would be cool.
That'd be awesome. Okay. Let's do promote your upcoming novel.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to check out our upcoming novels, we're releasing our chapters on our website, World of Urda. So World WORLD of Urda URDA.com. We're releasing them on our website. We're also releasing them on Patreon and on Wattpad. If you've heard of Wattpad, it's kind of a social media platform for writers, and so that's usually the easiest place to read it. Honestly, if you wanna check them out, we're also all over social media. If you like Dungeons and Dragons, if you like fantasy novels or just video games, even we post pretty regularly, and we're just if you're a nerd, you're gonna have fun with us. Uh, so we would love to hear your feedback and hear what you think about our chapters, or just about the story. Even if you think it sucks, why does it suck? Like, I would love to hear that.
Yeah. So,
But yeah.
so do you think, Miss Kristen, that rejection make you perfect?
Yeah, so it depends. You need a certain amount of feedback. You need a certain amount of criticism in order to make it better, for sure. It's more like the iron sharpens iron expression. It's hard and it probably doesn't feel very good, but it does help you improve. So which is part of why we're inviting, the community input on our chapters. But also, we just think it's a really good story. We've been, both me and my co-author, we've been reading fantasy books since we were, I think you mentioned somebody earlier who was reading fantasy since they were 6 years old. That's me. I've been reading fantasy since I was 6 years old. They were my first chapter books, was literally a fantasy chapter book and a Star Wars chapter book. And so I know the genre very well. I love good storytelling. I've been exposed to storytelling in different mediums. I'm also an actor and a singer, and so I take it very seriously. It means the world to me, and I genuinely think that this is a good story. That we have something special here, and particularly a good love story, because I think good love stories are hard to find. And they, a lot of times, they get stuck in the trap of will they, won't they, and I hate that. I hate that.
Yeah.
And so I actually really, really love exploring, what happens after the guy and the gal get together. What happens? Like, what's that relationship like? Like, it's and a lot of, and some people have started to explore that in books. It's like, oh, what happens after happily ever after? But we don't even bother like stopping at happily ever after. That's like the middle for us, is when they get together, and then you get to explore the meat of the relationship and how two very different people, first of all, fall in love, and then how do they make a relationship like that work. And it's so much fun, and it's difficult, and it's emotional roller coaster, which is all the sort of stuff that you want to experience in a good book, I think, in a good story. And so and we've got elves and magic and deities and monsters and and action, and so
Yes.
yeah, so.
So, Miss Kristen, if you gonna sing a song about Belle and Bow, what is it?
Oh my gosh, if I was gonna sing a song. It's funny. I'm actually a songwriter. I don't write like a ton of music,
Yes.
but I have started writing songs again now that I've gotten back into writing in general. So I guess I could write a song for the trilogy. I just haven't yet. But I don't know. That's actually I did write a song. It's set in world. I couldn't sing it right now because I haven't written the melody yet. But it's kind of like a summary of what I would just said. How when two people come together, instead of like tearing them down for their flaws or their weaknesses, Love means that you protect them when they're weak. You complement, like your strengths complement each other. When one of them stumbles, you protect them until they can stand back up, or you help pull them back up. And so I kind of wrote a song exploring relationships in that kind of I'm trying to figure out how to say this in that medium, I guess, or through that theme. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yes, I hope when you come back and promote your debut novel, you can sing the song.
100%. It'll be done. It will definitely be done by then.
That'd be awesome. So, Ms.Christen, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is great.
Lovely talking to you. Buddy count people. See you soon.